This is a great day in our Cistercian year, the consecration, the anniversary of the consecration of the church. And the church has been consecrated 40 years ago, and it was built 63 years ago. And so I would like to talk today about building, about work, and I would like to put a couple of thoughts together. Now, there are still a couple of monks who are involved in the building. There are only a couple left, and I'm one of them. I entered the monastery in January of 1952, and in March we had the breaking of the ground on the Feast of St. Joseph. It was a cold winter day, and this was just a big field up here, and I was the youngest novice, so I was leading the procession of 175 monks from the old converted barns up along what's now the cloisters up to where the church is. And where the high altar is now, there was a statue of St. Joseph. Well, we got through that ceremony in the cold, and then the abbot in chapter says, well, now, as soon as the spring comes, the big bulldozers are going to come up over the hill and start moving the ground. In the meantime, the novices went out with flatbeds and a tractor out to the fields and to the edges of the fields where there were rock walls, old New England rock walls. And we had to collect stones for the building of the church. And so we'd go out there, and it was lots of fun. We were young, and we had a sign language that was meant to be used for important reasons. But some of us made a broader interpretation of that. And if you're really clever, you could just about say anything in sign language. So it was a lot of fun. Collecting the rocks, that was a great fun with all these novices on top of these flatbeds going in the woods and collecting stones. And then when the bricks arrived in Spencer in freight cars, we used to go down in these trucks with a great big canvas on top of us because it was cold, and we'd go down there and line up from the freight car to the bed of the truck and just pass along the bricks, and then come up here and put them in piles for the masons. Well, it was great fun. Now, the greatest penance that you could have at this time was to be told when the lineup for work, after the office, we would line up, and the submaster would give you your work assignment. And the worst work assignment you could be given was dust the dormitories. You do this by yourself. So here you are in these great big dormitories, dusting the floors, and all the other guys are out there having fun on the tractors and picking up stones, because that was fun. But the worst penance was mopping a dormitory. Well, anyway, the people that were involved in the building of this church, it means an awful lot to us. It's a very emotional celebration, because we remember how hard it was to work, but how, I don't know, it was miraculous. This church started to go up, And by the 15th of August, we started, broke the ground in March. The 15th of August, we put in the cornerstone. And that was a big ceremony. And then, as the walls were going up, the stained glass windows were ready to be put in. When the bell tower went up, the flatbed came with the 3 bells that were meant for the bell tower from Switzerland. Now, how they could get those bells ready and the stained glass ready and the high altar ready, to get all those things coordinated and put up just at the right time. It was an unbelievable job. So here we are, we're putting in the cornerstone in August, and you go around to the winter, and the next August, we had our first Mass in the church. So it went up in 18 months. Now, there was a reason for that. The abbot wanted us to get into the buildings as soon as possible because we had a TB epidemic here. Way back in the 50s, maybe some of you might remember, that TB was a real problem. There were TB sanitariums in this area. There were many of them. And every 6 months, the caravan would come up back of our infirmary, and each one of us would have to go get a chest x-ray. And the next day in church, you'd see that this one was gone, and that one was gone. They were gone to the sanitarium. And it usually took 2 years to have somebody go through that cure, and the only cure was fresh air and bed rest. There were no medicines or anything as a cure. But the reality of it was that the thing was built in a very short time. Everything was coordinated unbelievably well, and we got into these beautiful buildings. And so, as I say, if you had something to do with the building, I mean, I did have a lot of help, you know. I didn't do it all by myself, but certainly I supervised the thing. Every Sunday, I would come up and see how they were doing with the construction, make sure everything was, you know. It was a very, very happy time. We all were very, very proud of that building. And so then in 1975, we had the consecration of the church. And to have the consecration of the church, you have to be debt-free. Then you can consecrate a building. So we were debt-free, and we were able to have the consecration. Now, Pope Benedict has said some beautiful things, and certainly he is conscious of the wonderful thoughts of Teilhard de Chardin. And when you think of putting up a building, it's work. And what is the meaning of work, and what is the meaning of work in the life of a Cistercian? Well, I think that we certainly have some beautiful thoughts from Benedict and beautiful thoughts from Teilhard de Chardin. Teilhard de Chardin says that when you and I work, we are in union, in connection with the work of God. God created this universe. After the Big Bang, he was aware, he willed the Big Bang, he willed that subatomic particle that was the Big Bang, and everything proceeded from that and in relationship to that from which it proceeded. Now, interesting enough, these are the exact words that we use in the early fathers of the church and the early documents of the church describing the Blessed Trinity. The Blessed Trinity is procession and relationship. The evolution, the procession of all things, all created things, they are in the process of proceeding from the other in relationship to the other. Everything in this world is in perfect relationship. When you look at those stars and the universe, it's unbelievable how magnificent it all is, and how it can happen that after the 20th of August, we see the first tree having a red leaf in it. It happens every year. You know it's going to happen. How does it happen? How does it happen that fall comes and the leaves fall off the trees? You know the snow is going to come in the winter. You know that the moon is going to have its cycle every single month. Everything up there is in perfect relationship to everything else. And we are here in our little globe, part of that great marvel that is the procession and the relationship that is creation and that is Blessed Trinity. Creation is the image of the Blessed Trinity. And at the center of that reality is you and I, with our minds that are capable of receiving the revelation and the understanding of the wonders of God. It's all part there. And the wonder of all this procession relationship is ourselves in connection with everything that is. You and I are connected with all this work that is being done in creation. The work of God. It never stops. The work of God is in continuous operation, you might say. And we are part of that. And when you go to work and create something, whether it is baking a pie or doing teaching a class, doing secretarial work, helping people in hospitals, whatever it is, it was not there a minute ago, and now you brought it into being. You worked on it, and so that now it is there, and it is in union with, in connection with all of creation, all of the work that God is doing. It's all the interconnectedness of all being. Now that's a quote from the encyclical on hope by Pope Benedict. He's talking about the dead, and he's saying that love does not end with the grave. We are still in connection with the departed. We are so connected with them that we can even ask forgiveness. What a beautiful thought. Our prayer, our relationship with the departed is very real, because he said of the interconnectedness of all being. We're all connected, and we're all part of this activity of God, this work of God, and it is always unfolding and always happening. And all of us, through our work, are in connection with this work of God. And when you think of the monastic work of God that we call the divine office the work of God, and it is the work of God because it is done through us, Jesus, glorifying his Father, unending, glorifying his Father. that divine office has been going on in that church now since it was opened, except for one day when there was a big hurricane and we didn't know if our bell tower was going to make it or not. So we went to another chapel. But that's the only time that the divine office has not been said in that church, where Jesus, standing in the souls of these men, praising God continuously. It goes on and on and on and on. That is work. And it is the same as your work, the work that you do, whatever it is work. And it is blessed, it is sacred, and it's part of this, this great reality, which is the human reality of being. Now, somebody told me this morning that just recently they were doing some experiments with subatomic particles. And they put, I guess, one part of the particle here, and they put the other one at a great distance over there. And when this particle was moved, this particle moved. And the space that went between the two of them, was the reality that when you touch this, this happens, was faster than sound, the speed of sound. So that there is a spiritual reality that cannot be seen, but that's real in this creation. And it is an image of God. And the scientists are going to end up proving the existence of God. They're finding spiritual realities. You touch this thing, and this thing over here is touched too. Yeah, the experiments with subatomic particles are very, very interesting. Well, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that building a church is work. And the activity that you do every day is work. And it is sacred. And it is really and truly divinized by the fact that you are holy. Every one of you is holy. And Jesus is bringing you into his life. You are being divinized by the reality of Jesus in you. And as Paul says, all things came into being through him and for him. That for him, we exist for him, so he can live in us. And in the Cistercian reality, for him to live in us, to glorify the Father. And so that all our work is sacred. All of your work is sacred. You are in union with all being. The interconnectedness of being. That's pure Teada Shaden. And it's pure Pope Benedict. Well, does anybody have any ideas or comments? Or